Hello and welcome dear viewers to my channel. Today I'll give you a basic introduction to planets, houses and signs in Vedic Jyotish. If you have not subscribed to my channel, then please do subscribe. In Vedic Jyotish we have 12 houses, 12 signs and 9 planets. As you can see on the board here, these are the 12 houses. They have been numbered. In each of the houses, that is in each house, there is one sign. And so there are 12 signs in all. This is the Kalpurush Kundli. That is why it always begins with Aries. The first sign is Aries in the Kalpurush Kundli. And the last sign or the 12th sign is Pisces. But if it is your birth chart, then in the first house there may be any sign, any other sign also might be there. What are the 12 signs? Aries, number 1, number 2 Taurus, number 3 Gemini, number 4 Cancer, number 5 Leo, number 6 Virgo, number 7 Libra, number 8 Scorpio, number 9 Sagittarius, number 10 Capricorn, number 11 Aquarius and number 12 Pisces. These are the 12 zodiac signs. And there are, as I told you, 9 planets. What are those planets? Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Rahu and Ketu. The 3 extreme outer planets, Uranus, Neptune and Pluto, they are generally not considered in Vedic Jyotish. But you can also consider them for making certain predictions. I personally feel that even those 3 extreme outer planets, they also should be taken into consideration. We will talk about those planets later on. Now, as you can see on the board, there are 12 houses. Each house has one sign, one zodiac sign. Now, what are these houses actually? These houses represent the various areas of our life. Each house stands for a certain area or a few things related to our life. Each of the houses. So we will just now look at each of the houses, what they primarily signify. I will talk about only the primary significations. There are so many significations, but I will talk about the primary ones. And who is the significator of that house? Which planet is the significator of that house? I will talk about that in today's session. So as you can see on the board, the first house is marked number 1. In that house you may have any sign, but here in the Kalpurush Kundli you have the Aries sign. Now the first house is the house of the self. It is the house of your body, your health, your soul, also your thought process, your viewpoint also. It is the house of your personality. It is, in a way, it represents your life, you can say. Your entire personality is represented by the first house. So, it's called the Lagna. The Lagna is the birth. So the first house also signifies birth of the native. Now, who is the significator of the first house? Which planet? The significator or the Karaka of the first house is Sun, the planet Sun. And the Lord of the first house in the Kalpurush Kundli, the Lord is Mars, because Aries is a sign which is ruled by the planet Mars. But the significator of the first house is Sun. Then let us go to the second house. The second house is the house of speech, is the house of your money, your it's the house of your accumulated wealth, your assets, your values, your possessions. It is the house of your family. I will only take into consideration the primary significations. Now, the Lord of the second house in the Kalpurush Kundli is Venus, because it is the sign of Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. And the significator of the second house is the planet Jupiter. Now let us go to the third house. The third house is the house of your efforts, house of skills, communication. It also shows the hand, your hand, and it shows your shoulder. The third house is the house of your willpower, your courage, of short travels. It is also the house of the subconscious mind. The third house in the Kalpurush Kundli is ruled by Mercury, because it is the sign of Gemini. It is in the sign of Gemini, it is ruled by Mercury. And the significator of the third house is the planet Mars. The fourth house. The fourth house is ruled by Moon. In the Kalpurush Kundli, the fourth house is ruled by Moon because it is in the sign Cancer. It is in the Cancer sign. And the Karaka of the fourth house is also Moon and Mercury too. So the fourth house has two Karakas or significators, Moon and Mercury. Now what is the fourth house? The fourth house is considered to be the house of the mother. The fourth house is actually your mother's house. It also signifies your house. The comforts that we find at home, the happiness that we derive from home and family, that is also signified by the fourth house. The peace of mind that we find at home, that also is signified by the fourth house. So this is the fourth house. Fourth house is ruled by the Moon. Now fourth house also signifies school education, the education that we usually acquire at school. Okay, now let us go to the fifth house. Fifth house in the Kalpurush Kundli is ruled by Leo sign, and Leo sign is the sign of Sun. So Sun is the lord of the fifth house, and the significator of the fifth house is Jupiter. Jupiter is the significator. Fifth house is the house of children. Fifth house is the house of creativity. It is the house of your college education, education which you acquire after you pass out of school. Some sort of higher education, you can say, yes, which is of a higher level. So that education, fifth house is the house of education also. Fifth house is also the house of love and romance. Fifth house is the house of healing also. So fifth house. Now fifth house, I told you the significator is Jupiter. Next let us go to the sixth house. The sixth house. Sixth house is ruled by Mercury in the Kalpurush Kundli, because the sign which rules sixth house is Virgo, and sixth house the significator of the 6th house are Mars and Saturn, both. Mars and Saturn. They are considered to be malefics, generally. Mars and Saturn. Now, actually, Mars is not a malefic planet. Mars represents your desire. Even Saturn is not malefic, because Saturn is the planet of justice. So, we should not actually, blindly follow these terms, malefic, and there are certain other terms, debilitated. These negative terms actually should not be, focused upon, because planets, they are always there to help us. We should know how to, derive benefits from them. So, 6th house is, signified. The significators of the 6th house are Mars and Saturn. 6th house, what does it stand for? 6th house stands for obstacles, enemies, debts. 6th house also stands for diseases. 6th house stands for your routine life also, your job and service also. Now let us go to the 7th house. The 7th house is the house of marriage. It is the house of marital life. It is the house of your spouse or life partner. It is the house of independent business also. 7th house is actually 10th from the 10th house, and so 7th house is also in a way the house of your profession, because 10th house is the house of profession, 7th is 10th from the 10th. This is the Bhavat Bhavam concept. So 7th house, the lord of the 7th house in the Kalpurush Kundli is Venus, because what sign we have there in the 7th house? Libra. And the significator of the 7th house is also Venus. Venus is also the significator of the 7th house. Now let us go to the 8th house. 8th house is the house of longevity. 8th house is the house of death, even sorrow. 8th house is the house of also, any kind of, all kinds of hidden things, things that are hidden knowledge, hidden wealth. So 8th house is that kind of house. Now, 8th house is also the house of transformation. In the Kalpurush Kundli, we have the sign Scorpio there, and that is why the 8th house is ruled by the planet Mars. And the significator of the 8th house is the planet Saturn. Now let us go to the 9th house. The 9th house is the house of fortune and wealth also. 9th house is actually the house of your luck. 9th house is the house of dharma, of duty, of religion, of long travels. In the Kalpurush Kundli, 9th house, we have the sign Sagittarius, and that is why it is ruled by the planet Jupiter. The Karaka or significators of the 9th house are Sun and Jupiter, both of them. Now let us go to the 10th house. The 10th house is the house of your profession, your karma. It is the house of fame, authority, power, status, reputation, promotion in job or business, whatever. So the 10th, it is also the house which signifies happiness that you derive from your father. And sorry, I forgot to mention, the 9th house is the house of your father also. 10th house is the happiness that you derive from your father. Now, in the Kalpurush Kundli, the sign which is there in the 10th house is Capricorn, and hence the 10th house is ruled by Lord Saturn. And the Karaka of the 10th house, the significators of the 10th house are Mercury, Sun, Jupiter and Saturn, all 4 planets. Next, let us go to the 11th house. The 11th house is the house of your gains, of rise in income or income. 11th house is the house of your friendships, social circle. Now 11th house is in the Kalpurush Kundli, we have the sign Aquarius there, and hence the lord of the 11th house is Saturn. And the significator of the 11th house is the planet Jupiter. Last, the 12th house. The 12th house is the house of losses. It is the house of sleep, the house of the unconscious state of mind. It is the house of even foreign land. It is the house of foreign settlement or foreign connections also. It is also the house of spirituality, 12th house. In the Kalpurush Kundli, the sign which is there in the 12th house is Pisces, and hence the lord of the 12th house is Jupiter. And the significator of the 12th house is the planet Saturn. Now friends, that's all I wanted to tell you today. This was a basic introduction to the houses, planets and signs. Do subscribe to my channel and share this video. Thank you so much.